the new format. So let's talk about
gosh.
Golf Twitter is very upset about this. So
I had to take I took 24 hours off. I couldn't do it.
I guess this has, I don't know what's official and what's not official, but this has been approved by the people, the players, the committee. I don't know. There's an official thing about this where basically there will be the designated events are likely going to be fields of 70 to 78 players with no cut. The other items that have come out of this new structure is that the PIP will come down, which I think is smart. The other things that will come out is essentially the cadence of these elevated events, which will likely be 2 elevated events, 3 non-elevated events, 2 elevated events, 3 non-elevated events, etc., etc. And the idea being that on those 3 non-elevated events, they're like little sprints where golfers can earn their way into elevated events. So, for example, Honda Classic last week, non-elevated event. Let's say that was the first one of a little sprint. Chris Kirk would get in because he won, but like Eric Cole would be very much in the mix to get into the next pair of elevated events because he had a good start there, and guys can earn their way in by getting hot.
Yeah. So, we could do a whole pod on this. By the way, breaking news from Golf Week, Adam Schupak reporting that Pebble is going to be a designated event next year. Not shocking because I think Jack Nicklaus talked about this on the broadcast last weekend
don't
or
tell
something.
your secrets to Jack. He's going to go on air and spill the beans.
Yeah, that was weird. But I'm curious about what just what that looks like with the other. Sorry, having microphone troubles. What that looks like with happening? I don't know what that looks like with the other designated events. I think, Rick, that I have. So this report first comes out from Eamon Lynch, and it was like this cascading effect throughout the day where you would get press conferences with guys talking about it. You'd get people's takes on it. You get video. There was just so much information that kept coming out. And my initial reaction, Rick, was like, man, this is not good. I don't like this. It felt WGC-ish to me. And I think I was wrong about that. I think it is mostly good. And I think the reason is it makes more things important than are important right now. Right now, the Valspar Championship doesn't like what does it mean? Like what are we doing?
I see what you're saying.
Now, if X number of guys from the Valspar can get into whatever the next elevated event is,
right?
All of a sudden, the Valspar has tremendous meaning because it sort of feeds into this king of the hill type hierarchy, right? And I think the other thing that it gives a lot of meaning to is the FedEx Cup, because, and this kind of flew under the radar. Dan Rappaport had a memo from Monahan to the players, and it said the designated events are no longer mandatory, and they would be releasing new FedEx Cup structures for all the tournaments. And that's good because it's going to incentivize, like before, Joseph Omania was talking about this. John Rahm's incentivized to play the 3M, to play Wyndham, to play the bad events if he actually wanted to win the FedEx Cup, like if that was his real goal. And so if I say, oh, well, John Rahm's not playing those events, then the implication is he doesn't really care about the FedEx Cup, which the implication is the FedEx Cup doesn't matter, right? It's sort of baked into the league, and you can tell it doesn't matter because that's the implication, right? And so now the FedEx Cup is going to matter. The FedEx Cup points at the end of the year, because the top 50 get into the designated events the following year. FedEx Cup matters. January FedEx Cup standings, guess what? They matter because 10 guys or whatever are getting into the next designated event. So it kind of heightens the importance of some stuff.
Okay, I generally agree with your take. I do like the idea that the Valspar and the Honda are going to matter more because it's a natural pathway into the events that are going to matter more. I'm on board with that. I think that is sellable. I think if it is not called the Whoop Sprint to Riviera, we're doing something wrong here, right? Like go sell that right now. The only problem I have is 78 players with no cut.
Yeah, I agree, and that's the part that I don't like.
Why can't we do 100 players with a cut?
Well, that was Andy Johnson's proposal, and he wrote an article for the Fried Egg that I thought was really good. Max Homa's argument against that was, and I think this was from Monahan, was that it makes the Honda you don't get names or players in that event, therefore the Honda will eventually go away, which I'm curious what you think about that.
It doesn't have to if you rotate the elevated events and you sell your sponsorships based on once out of every 4 years, Honda is getting an elevated event. The other argument around it ensures the top players are going to be there on the weekend so that sponsors are getting Rory on Saturday and Sunday. In my opinion, I understand it, is BS garbage. I don't care about that. If you know who cares about that, the CEO of Workday cares about that. I don't care about that. These guys make a ton of cuts. And if you are getting 20 stars in these events for 100 players and a T65 and tie cut, are 2 guys going to miss the cut and you're going to be left with 18 stars? Am I supposed to be offended by that as a fan?
Wait, hold on. Give me that scenario again.
So here's the argument. The argument, right, is we need our stars here on the weekend. And and no cut guarantees that they're going to be here on the weekend.
I'm with you. I hate the no cut. Here's the thing that felt a little have your cake and eat it too ish, to use a term that was blown up last year. We're a meritocracy. That's what we're staking our future on. We're the meritocracy. We're the competitive league. We're the one that matters. And I think this does it does reflect that. However, the no cut thing is not. So it's almost like you're trying to have the competitiveness with also the entertainment side, which is like, most people are not you, Rick. Most people just want to go have a beer at the Phoenix Open and see JT play 2 holes. I mean, we experienced that, right?
Yes.
And so you're a little bit trying to have the competitive and the entertainment with the no cut and the sponsor exemption. 4 sponsor exemptions into these designated events. I don't love that, because I get that it's like just create a Tiger exemption. I don't care what you do with Tiger. Don't give me 4 sponsor exemptions, because at that point, Rory said on Wednesday, like, hey, if you don't play well at these top events, you're not going to be in them next year. Well, that's not true for Rory and for JT and think about Ricky Fowler. I was thinking about him today. You know what he would have been in for the last 5 years, even though he was playing bad golf? All the designated events. That's not good. Like, if you truly want a meritocracy, that's not a good look for your league. If you want a Tiger only exemption, whatever. I don't care. Like, he's earned whatever you want to give him, but I didn't love like sort of the mixture of entertainment and meritocracy.
You've been very good at reminding people that Jay Monahan has an unenviable position in which he has stakeholders that he needs to make them all happy. Sponsors, players like Rory McIlroy, players like Bo Hostler, fans, different segments of fans. He has to make them all happy, and their desires, wants, and needs rarely overlap. It is a very unenviable position to be in. So I understand the difficulty here. And I think for the most part, the changes that have been made are generally all very good. I just personally think we should be at a little bit larger fields with a cut. The other thing, Kyle.
I agree, by the way. I don't disagree with that. We're on the same page with that. It's a small thing to quibble over, I guess. I think the other thing it does, there is going to be churn, like in the designated events, which is a good thing, which there's not it's not live, because there's very, very little churn in live year over year. There's actually more churn week or designated event to designated event on the PGA Tour than there is year over year on live, which is, so save your arguments on that. I forgot the other thing I was going to say. What were you just talking about?
We were just saying that this is an unenviable position to be in, and that there are different stakeholders, and it's generally a good thing, but the no cut.
Oh, yeah. I think what's interesting, and this was sort of the argument I was trying to make on Wednesday, is what they did is sort of shine a light on the middle class, where the middle class is now going to be playing more of the Honda Classic stuff and the Valspar stuff, or whatever the non-designated events are. And that almost pushes down the guys on the Korn Ferry who are trying to rise up. Now, the argument is, like, if guys are truly great on the Korn Ferry, they're trying to rise up, they should be able to beat the Chris Kirks and the Billy Horschels, or Billy Horschel's not middle class, but whoever the middle class guys are that are getting pushed down into the Honda and the Valspar. So I don't know where I eventually land on that.
I have two more things. One, I think, is we should probably also remember that, think about how much has changed in the last 18 or 12 months. Like, we might do 1 year of this, and they might say, okay, 1 hour, we're going to go to 120. You know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot of stuff that is still going to change, or could change. My other thing, Kyle, and this is completely, so I'm now officially on the record. I think this is generally very good. I would prefer 100 or 120 with a cut. I'm on the record with that. I also think, just from an optics standpoint, that if we sat in a room, you and I sat in a room with all of our stakeholders, and the conclusion that we came to, that the best thing that we could do was 78 players and no cut, I think someone in the room should have said, hey guys, Liv's going to torch us for this. Should we just go to 100 and have a cut? Should we just do 70 and top 50 get through to a cut? You know what I mean? I just couldn't believe that after all of this, optics wise, they allowed this to happen.
It's a good point. And Spieth actually talked about that today. He was interviewed about it, and he said, listen, Liv didn't even really come up in our meetings. And you're like, well, maybe it should have. But you know what I would have done with that, Rick? I would have said, hey, we're going to be like the Masters. We're going to have,
there you go,
not US Open fields, but we're going to have Masters fields. And you almost attach the psychology of it to Augusta instead of to Live, right? And that's just a much better attachment. And you say, hey, we're going to have 90 player fields or 80, whatever. You could do it in the 80s. I mean, the Masters has 85 player fields. And then on the weekend, we're going to cut it down to 50. And you're like, man, that actually is that's kind of a meaningful cut, right? And again, the commercialization of that, I don't think it necessarily works, or at least that's the argument that the tour would make. But if you truly wanted a competitive meritocracy, this is the real deal type stuff, I think that would have been a pretty good move.
Yes, I agree. So that's basically that. Anything else that we missed on this news?
Well, I wish they would kind of unleash the Korn Ferry stuff. And so you could almost have this storyline of hey, this guy was a qualifier into the Korn Ferry Tour this year, and he played his way into the non-elevated, and then he played his way into the elevated, which would be just it would be one of those English Premier League stories, but instead of over years, it's over weeks or months, which is sort of how golf works. I think that would be, and maybe they will eventually do that. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, there is kind of an opportunity. I don't want to say to do away with the Corn Ferry, but you could almost have, you're naturally going to get now there's 3 levels. Now there's going to be basically 3 tours. It's going to be PGA Tour Plus, PGA Tour, Corn Ferry, where if they were much more integrated with one another, like I would love to see an integrated ranking system, right? Where guys can, I don't know, kind of fly up, fly down, get into these events, make runs. I think I mean, again, I'm speaking of things I know nothing about, and I'm sure logistically it is like way harder, but I think that would be pretty cool.
What do you think the PGA Tour should use as their ranking system if they were to implement that?
Distance
Or what
per
do you
shot.
think? What do you think was suggested that they should use if they did something like that?
I'm sure it's the SI golf ranks.
I think you know the actual answer.
I think I do.
Let's see. I had a couple more things. That might have been it. I think we talked about it. I loved and I think the thing that they nailed is this idea that Eric Cole can play his way into the designated events.
Yes.
Like
And
that,
you know what? Until you said that, I was kind of like, when you were like, the Valspar is now more important, I was like, actually, yeah, it kind of is now, because it used to be nothing. And
well,
now,
it used to just be like it kind of was like this with like a little hump every now and then.
yeah. Now it's
And now
actually
it's like
pretty darn
like
meaningful.
this.
Yeah, it's a path. It's a pathway.
Yeah, and I don't agree. I think strangely, the tour almost made the non-designated. They improved those almost more than they improved the designated.
Yeah, they kind of did.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think you could make that argument. I don't know if again we got to see some of this stuff play out, because I think it's going to be. I think the frustrating thing that I had is like you go to Phoenix this year, you went to Riviera this year. Those are freaking big time all world events. And then the tour is like, actually, we're gonna change those a little bit, and you're like, they seem so perfect, right?
Yeah, that was the other thing. The current elevated event system has been a raging success. By the way, let's change it. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think you could have done that with, again, by going to 100 or 90 or whatever and having the cut, and people would have been like, okay, I think I can get on board with that. But just the 78 with no cut it's too much. It's too much change from like the success that they're currently having, I think.
I agree.
And it makes Thursday and Friday not as meaningful.